Good morning, everyone. So we've already heard in several sessions this week how great talent sells shows, whether that's Jeremy Clarkson or Anton Deck. And in fact, even more than that, when you have that great talent and it's properly used, how it can actually become truly channel defining. But are we getting everything right when it comes to the use of talent? Here to discuss that this morning, we have John Thoday, to my right, co-founder of Avalon, Wayne Garvie, Chief Creative Officer at Sony Pictures, Ed Havard, who is Head of Entertainment, TV Events and Sport at Channel 4, and Jill Offman, who is EVP of Comedy Central and Paramount Channels. So Ed, starting with you, how often do you think that talent is more important than the format? And is talent becoming increasingly more important to the commissioning process?
I think talent is king. I mean, I think the Holy Grail is always to find the best talent to work with, and the best shows are always extensions of the talent involved. I'm always slightly nervous when people come in and go, we've got the most amazing format, and you can put anyone you like in it, and it'll still be amazing. You think, that's not quite what we're here to do. So I think talent-led projects and talent-led ideas are the Holy Grail for us always.
Okay. And Jill, Comedy Central and before it Paramount Comedy, there's a long history there of kind of finding and nurturing new talent. Is that something that you're still committed to?
We're not only committed to it, we have no choice, because it's no secret that established talent doesn't necessarily come to a smaller broadcaster first. So it's within our mandate, as well as our business plans, to go out and seek the newest, the youngest, the hottest, the least exposed, and find ways of developing them. Not just finding them, but nurturing them, because what happens is if you find someone very quickly and you expose them very quickly, they may fail very quickly. So we have a very rigorous system of somebody might appear in somebody's video short on our YouTube channel before they get their own video short. Maybe they'll get a Snapchat first. And all the way up to appearing on a show with Jimmy Carr or Russell Howard in it. So we have a real farm system.
Great. And John, how does your kind of farm system work? In terms of how do you go out and find new talent, and then what's your process?
We basically employ people who we think have an eye for talent, and we let them choose the talent they like. So I am a great believer in empowering a group of people to have different tastes. So that way you can have a kind of eclectic and interested. You don't dictate what is good talent. You find people who have an eye for it, I think.
And then in terms of the broadcasters' part in that, how do you think, particularly, for example, the public service broadcasters, what do you think their responsibility is, and how do you think they're handling that?
Well, I think that there is a great problem in British broadcasting today, which is there's less money spent on developing new talent now than I can ever remember. And I think that potentially we're storing up a very bad problem for the future. I think we're living on amazing talent. And I also think that, just to be clear, in my view, talent is off-screen and on-screen. It's not a performer, it's a performer, a writer, the people that make the shows, producers. All of those people, I think that the training and the development of new talent is at its worst that I can remember. If you think that something like The Crown has been produced by somebody, a 63-year-old producer, I mean, where are the young producers? Where's the Jonathan Ross of tomorrow? I was at an award ceremony recently, and it was hosted by Jonathan Ross. I remember being at one in 1992, and it was hosted by Jonathan Ross. And I think that there is a real problem, particularly because perhaps the BBC, through diktats from government about what they may or may not spend money on, has pulled back from developing new talent on and off screen.
Wayne, is that something you agree with in terms of BBC and Channel 4?
Well, I'm really unhappy with John because he's just revealed Andy Harris's age, which is not a good thing. Because Andy's keep dyeing that hair to look a lot younger.
No, he stopped dyeing it, didn't he?
Well, I know, it's questionable. Well, I haven't really got to the bottom of it.
Men get better with age, it's all good, don't
Well, I'm hoping so. Look, talent is everything. And I think what's quite interesting about what John said there is that, yeah, the nursery slopes don't exist anymore. I came through working on programs. There's a whole generation of people. You look at the people who transformed the entertainment business internationally in Britain. They all came through Big Breakfast, This Morning, all those kind of shows. We got to work both on and off screen. There were shows. There was BBC Choice, BBC Three. Channel 4 was much better at doing this in the past, I think. And now we've seen broadcasters that have become more risk averse. They want the talented names. And I think also we have a problem in our industry, which is how do we, when I started out, it was really sexy to be in telly. I was, I was a working class boy from Ipswich, and I couldn't believe that, God, how glamorous was telly. Now, actually, you're kind of going to go on YouTube and make your own stuff, and actually, you don't really want to be on TV. That's quite an issue for us as an industry.
And do you agree in terms of Channel 4's responsibility and the part it's playing in terms of developing new talent?
I definitely agree in terms of its responsibility. I mean, it's part of our remit to go out and find new talent and to nurture new and diverse talent. I think, I mean, John and I were talking about this before. I mean, I think Channel 4 has made massive interventions in this space in recent years. I mean, when we did the Paralympics, we went out and spent £1 million training new disabled talent who'd never been on television before to go out and anchor 700 hours of live television. I mean, this is, when you talk about there not being nursery slopes, I mean, that's not just a nursery slope, that has completely changed the ability for that talent to operate in our industry. And they've gone off and done other things, both at Channel 4 and at the BBC. So those interventions are really, really significant, and they are still happening. I think what is a broader issue is the extent to which some of those so-called nursery slopes that existed before aren't there anymore, and we do need to look at what we are doing, particularly in entertainment. I think to find new ways to give talent that kind of opportunity. But again, I mean, I hate to go on about Channel 4, but one of the biggest mainstream entertainment hits is The Last Leg, and The Last Leg has one of its main presenters, Alex Brooker, who a few years ago came to us through a talent scheme. So, it swings and roundabouts.
And do you plan to implement other schemes like you did with the disabled scheme for diversity more broadly, or do you have other kind of plans in terms of how you develop that new talent?
We have got a lot of schemes that are seeking to make the same kind of interventions. I mean, as John said, off-screen talent is as important. And so, for example, we've just announced an initiative where 17 new drama writers will be having their own projects. 40 new directors will be getting projects across all genres. So I think these interventions are really important, and sometimes I think in this conversation the scale and significance of those initiatives gets lost a little bit, and I think we just need to be conscious of the fact that they are going on and they are making a massive difference.
Okay. Jill, Wayne touched earlier on the notion of the amount of talent that's out there on YouTube and kind of doing their own kind of short form. Do you agree that talent isn't interested in moving to television? Do you think that is a possible
No, I
move?
patently disagree. What I find is there's a...
Great, we're going to have a row. I was worried.
But I want to...
I disagree as well.
Brilliant.
I want to tackle something that both John and Wayne implied earlier, and there is a disproportionate amount of attention on the PSBs because they are larger. But every time the PSBs fail to develop somebody new, that's another opportunity for us. And it may be another opportunity for Sky, and it may be another opportunity for some of the smaller channels. And I think that the ecology, the ecosystem growing larger has actually been a bigger opportunity for talent. And so the PSBs can and should and continue to do what they do. But the nursery slopes are there. Many of the people who work in your stable, from the newest to the most established, are coming through the process. That relates to YouTube and even Snapchat as well, and Instagram. Though all of those people, they grow up platform neutral. They're like, oh, we want to do a long thing. We'll do it with you. We want to do a short thing. Can you help us with both? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But there's such a diversity of opportunities as well as talent that I think young people more than anything are not platform exclusive. And the more portals you offer them, the more opportunities you have to work with them.
So Jill's obviously incredibly positive about the opportunities out there for talent and what they can do. John, what do you think the biggest challenge is in developing talent? Do you think there are actually enough platforms out there for people to hone their craft?
I think I think there are obviously more platforms out there in general than there ever have been. But in terms of platforms which can provide proper exposure, there are not really any more now than there were for new talent, than there were 20 years ago. But there's less room on, so there's less room on BBC One, there's less room on BBC Two, there's less room on Channel 4, there's hardly any room on ITV, there never has been. And the truth is that maybe you need to expose new talent in places where shows can succeed. New talent, it's not just about doing a blap with an artist or saying there's somebody on YouTube. It's about them learning how to make television. I don't agree with it that talent doesn't want to be on TV. I regularly meet YouTubers who come to us for management. The reason they come is because they want to be on TV.
Television.
Yeah.
They want to make high-end product. They watch shows on Netflix, they watch shows on Sky Atlantic, and they want to make shows that cost money, but they need to learn how to do that. So it's a long way from making a YouTube video in your bedroom about a subject that interests you, that interests lots of other people, to a scripted drama or a scripted comedy or a new entertainment show. And really, years ago, I remember the first winners of the Perrier Award included Stephen Fry, Emma Thompson and Hugh Laurie. They were given a TV series that year and on the BBC. It just doesn't happen anymore. You have to wait maybe 10 years before there's enough interest to get you on.
What about Phoebe?
That's true.
Yeah. And what about, Michaela Cole didn't win a Perrier Award, and she's a BAFTA award-winning
Fleabag.
actress, writer, and she's had a huge hit on Channel 4. And, and she came through a blap. So, again, it's...
I think there are exceptions,
colour.
obviously, and I think if you're a broadcaster, it's easy to point to those exceptions.
Yeah.
You do a lot of things, but I'm really, a big part of what we do is about new things, and my experience is there's less opportunity now than there ever has been. So,
And Wayne-
and I think Channel 4, to be honest, is one of the best places, but it's still not good enough. And it certainly isn't what it used to be. In the late 80s and the 90s, Channel 4 would send its entire entertainment and commissioning team to Edinburgh for the whole month, and a lot of what is on TV now, like the French and all the aging comics, right, came from that initiative. They maybe go for 2 days during the TV festival now, yet the Edinburgh Festival is 10 times the size, and it's driven by the public. So I don't think the opportunities are there in the main broadcasters, and I think that's where they need to be opportunities.
Wayne, just to come to you in terms of the shows that are available for people to kind of really grow their careers. Do you think those opportunities are there as there were sort of 10 or 20 years ago?
What you mean on screen?
On screen. So, for example, where people used to start out on the equivalent of CBBC and then they would progress their careers.
John and I were talking about this earlier, that there was a sort of, if you take, everyone always talks about Ant and Dec, but the Ant and Dec story goes on for like 10 years. And there was a common pattern, which was people would start on regional television, perhaps, that's where I first worked with Coogan and Caroline Aherne. Those things don't exist anymore. Or people would start in CBBC or the children's television, then they would move into children's television on a Saturday morning, then they go to tea time, and then before you know it, Ant and Dec. We've lost that path. That path has gone. Those programs don't exist anymore.
And why do you think there is less appetite for those programs? Why have they disappeared?
Well, a lot of this actually, of course, is that the industry has changed completely. I do think there is in danger of us sort of wallowing in a bit of nostalgia about talent. Someone was talking about Bruce Forsyth the other day, and he was great and everything, but Bruce was a product of a particular time in history, and it's kind of a bit like saying, why aren't Byron and Shelley, who's the new Byron and Shelley? Why aren't they selling big poetry books? Or why isn't Chuck Berry, who's the new Chuck Berry? Why don't they make music like Chuck Berry anymore? Entertainment has moved on. We're not going to have Bruce Forsyth anymore, because if Bruce the Mighty Atom was around now, he would be on Britain's Got Talent, and his career would have a completely different trajectory. So I think we have to understand it's changing, and we're seeing that because of all the digital platforms and all the opportunities people have.
I think there is a danger we talk ourselves down too much. I think the examples are different. That's the truth of it. The Last Leg started out as a sweaty late night, 11 o'clock post-Paralympics show with 20 crews standing in as the audience, and it has grown over a period of 4 years to be an award-winning, huge entertainment show with new, diverse talent at the heart of it. It's there for all to see.
The fact you've had to bring up the last leg several times,
but
suggests. But like the fact is that if it's, the amount of money invested in new talent today is less than it was 10 years ago. Therefore, the successful new talent in the future will be less. It's a fact because there's less investment.
And you don't think the BBC Three continuing to exist is playing its part, or do you think that has diminished now?
Well, whatever you think about the BBC Three situation, the bottom line is they're spending a third of the money than they did. So
the reason I bring up the last leg is name me one other entertainment show on a terrestrial broadcaster that's been a hit that has new or diverse talent at the heart of it.
Well, I think that's his argument, isn't it? That there isn't.
Yeah, but that's why I bring it up the whole time, because it matters.
Well, name me another entertainment show that's been a hit on Channel 4 other than that.
Well, I mean, but that's a different point.
I think you focus too much on the last leg, is what I'm saying.
I'm going to move us on. I'm going to move us on, and just Jill, I think you've got some thoughts around in terms of talent that once you've discovered it and you've kind of given them their first one or two projects, the risks that there are, particularly now that we've seen the sort of the mid-range entertainment shows disappearing, that they actually get pushed too hard and too far, too quickly, and that's actually can be really dangerous for them.
Yeah, I think there's, panels by nature bring out negativity and nostalgia and complaints, particularly about the BBC. But I think that there has never been a better time to be talent or talented. There's so many different windows for it. But the risk of that is that actually there is a scramble for anybody with a modicum of talent. And we literally will get 3 pages of script. And if there's any kind of voice to it, we'll actually sign them up. We did that last week. It was 3 pages. It was funny, it was authentic, it was relatable. I don't get that often. And we signed them up and we're like, okay, now what do we do with them? Of course, we do have a system to work with them. But I think, John, you were saying this earlier, I think the discovery process for me, from my perspective, and I can only speak from my perspective, isn't broken. It's that middle level training process, because there's only new talent and big hits, and there isn't very much in the middle. And we have very, very talented, extremely well educated, wherever they've learned their craft, people who are starting out. But to develop 6 scripts is one thing. Maybe you'll do a series of 6 and 2 will be good. But to get to the point where we have hundreds of scripts, and those opportunities then for thousands of people to go through them, either as writers, directors, producers, floor directors, that's something I think we really have to focus on, the middle ground rather than the discovery. That's harder, less sexy. And it's not a blap, and it's not even a Snapchat. It's rigorous and difficult.
And do you relate to that at Channel 4 in terms of that sort of middle ground? What's your approach?
I mean, I think it's a very good point. I mean, I think it's about saying what happens between those two stages. And I think the blaps, the schemes like the blaps are still really important there. And this is why I'm torn a bit with this, because Rishin Conity is about to have a new show on Channel 4. Which came out of a blap. Michaela Cole came out of a blap. We've got a brand new writers, brand new show, Lee and Dean, which came out of blaps. So they are having a significant impact. I think it's about how you sustain and how you hold on to that talent. I mean, John was talking about this earlier. How you make them feel they have a relationship with the broadcaster, they want to stay with you and do their best work 2, 3, 4, 10 years after they've done their blaps.
And John, you've had a lot of experience of working with the American broadcasters. Do you think they're better than we are at developing talent, and in fact, developing British talent?
I think there are more platforms in the US that are long-running successes, which involve big teams, whether they be on-screen or off-screen. Which there's nothing better than working on a hit to learn how to make television. So if you're lucky enough to be on The Daily Show for 8 years, by the time you leave it, you're quite a big start, but you know how TV's made. And I think that we lack what I was in scripted, in entertainment. To be honest, I think in some cases, in returning factual, we lack the ability to focus on how you nurture a television show to proper success for a broadcaster, such that you have to kind of perpetuate it. And when you have to perpetuate something, that necessitates bringing on new people. And you're bringing on new people into a situation where people really know what they're doing. So I think for me, things like interventions to do with blaps are a part of it, but there's no substitute for working on a hit. And long-running returning hits develop talent.
So do you think that's the biggest kind of factor in success in the US? Is it the fact that they're commissioning in volume?
I think that, well, the truth is that in the US market, when something succeeds, the whole industry everybody involved in that hit gets together to make sure it keeps going successfully. And in the UK, what tends to happen, and partly because we are led by public service broadcasters who are big in the marketplace, that isn't a necessity for a public service broadcaster. Consequently, when you get a hit, and let's say you're bothered about how much you pay people, it's easier to say to the talent involved in a hit, go and do something else to keep them happy, than it is to say, we'll do some more episodes and work out how to keep the show going. And I think that's a fundamental problem in UK broadcasting, is that we the industry, haven't really learned that well, except in some cases in drama, like obviously in the returning soaps, absolutely, because they pay the bills for those broadcasters. We're not great at taking a show and perpetuating it. And if we were better at that, we'd be better at developing talent. That said, on a positive note, I think we have amazing talent in the UK. I think the Michaela Cole example is a very good one. Channel 4 found Michaela Cole out of theatre, and the truth is we've got incredible creative voices. We're less good at turning those creative voices into successful long-running television. And what I increasingly find happening is that successful talent in the UK goes to the US.
So I love John Oliver's show, right, which you produce as well as manager. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. To my mind, it's a utter tragedy for us that we haven't got John doing that show in Britain about British politics, economics, etc. And we've never got, I can't remember the last time we had a proper satirical show. So my question to you, I'm now taking
well, before I answer the question, I'd like to say we make a show called Unspun, hosted by Matt Ford on UK TV, which is a political show, which actually is based around a host who has a point of view, who loves politics. And I think the fundamental problem of satirical shows, and there are two problems. One is we don't tend to want to build a show around the host. Like if you take the MASH report, Nish Kumar was cast into it. Yeah. He's talented. The guys that write MASH, they're talented. But they didn't build the show around Nish Kumar. And in general, for some reason, I don't know what it is, we don't like to do that. If you look at the origins of Jonathan Ross, the origins of The Last Resort, which was just a chat show, they didn't know that Jonathan Ross was going to do that. He was a producer at the company, and they couldn't find somebody to host it. So he ended up hosting a chat show.
Except Charlie Brooker's the exception to that. Charlie Brooker's the preeminent satirist in this country, and he shows all his shows.
Yeah, Charlie Brooker is an exception and has been very successful.
Yeah, but I totally agree. Satire doesn't work unless you build it out of the.
So I think there's a problem. The problem is allowing the point of view. The other thing is British broadcasters cannot allow a satire show to have a political bias. So if you can't allow that host to show what their views are. They have to be even-handed, right? Whereas in the US, Jon Stewart can take his position, right? John Oliver can do stuff about corporations. Stephen Colbert can take a position, right? So it's very hard to take. People are so bothered about, being fair, right? That satire should be dangerous, right? And it's very hard to be dangerous on British broadcast. People say they want it, but when it comes to it, they don't really. The BBC's too scared to do something satirical. They couldn't do that. Was the week that was now. They think they could, but they can't.
So Wayne, something that John touched on earlier was this notion of breadth, and something that we talk about that the broadcasters can do that, for example, the SVODs can't, is we can say, well, look, if you stay with us, you can have a radio show, you can do daytime, you can have this sort of multiple offering. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, actually, I don't know if it is such a good thing, because actually, it's coming back to the point you were making, John Oliver makes one show. He does it really, really brilliantly. And it's getting better and better and better because he's just focused on that. And coming back to something, I think this is what John's alluding to. We have British television is unlike American television. You don't get rewarded with success. You have a hit show on the BBC. You don't actually get paid more to do season 3, 4, and 5. You actually are expected to cut the budget, bizarrely, whereas in America, you get more money. So, and as John says, everyone works on that show until it stops making money. really. But everyone is focused on that one show, whereas in Britain, what we'll say to a talent is, yeah, you can do this and we'll give you a radio show. You spread them really, really thinly, actually. And I think focus is everything. When you manage talented people, it's about getting them to focus on the thing that they're really good at until they're really, really good at it.
But we have to create scale in the UK. We don't have the same kind of economics that they have in the US. So they have their return on investment case looks a little better than ours does when we try to commission Catastrophe or, in our case, a sitcom from a writer who was just out of high school. It's very, very hard to sustain the machine that the US can to build and grow and focus on that kind of talent.
I don't know, though.
I don't
Why
think that's
not?
true.
Why couldn't you do that? If you had a hit show, okay, why wouldn't you stick with it?
We would.
But, no, yeah, sorry, I think you probably would. But actually, in the public service remit, there's still a thing in British television. You do 4 series and everyone goes, no, we should probably try to do something else.
Don't you think that's a remit? Don't you think the PSBs almost have both an inherent and an explicit remit towards novelty?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean,
But do you think we are
but the truth
structured?
is that to some extent, the British, if you take mainstream broadcasting and you look at ITV1 and BBC1, right, prime time is soaps. Almost no money is spent on developing prime time shows in the UK other than Saturday nights, because they rely on something which has existed for 50 years or longer, right? And yeah, that's where the biggest audience is. So bizarrely, we're all sitting here talking about young talent. Who spends any money on finding the soaps are in decline? Everyone's in denial about it, and they wonder. And it's painted as people don't want mainstream broadcasting anymore. But maybe it's the fact that very, very old programming is getting past it, right? And no money is being spent on developing the next big show for prime time. And I think that. Are
you talking entertainment or scripted or both?
Anything. Like the truth is, when was the last big returning pre-9 o'clock show on BBC One or ITV other than on Saturday night?
Okay, so one of the things here that's at the heart of whatever genre we're talking about, really, I guess, and I know it's been touched on by the conversations about the SVODs, is how much creative freedom people are getting with the SVODs versus the traditional broadcasters. Do you think, Ed, for example, Channel 4, do you think you give talent enough creative freedom?
I'm bound to say yes. I mean, I think the reason actually a lot of talent do stick with us, and I think a lot of the sort of black style talent that then evolve into something else do hang around, is because we do exactly that. I think actually the move to SVOD platforms for some talent is not just about creative freedom. There are a whole host of other reasons involved as well. And I think we probably have to be more alive to the fact that they are working in different ways. And I mean, just the simple thing of things like durations really impacts on talent. And that's a conversation we're having a lot with some of the people we're working with at the moment. But again, I just think it's just more nuanced than that.
Okay. And Jill, because obviously you don't have the budgets of the public service broadcasters, do you think there's a pressure on you to actually give more creative freedom? Is that one of the positives that you bring to the table?
Yeah, we have to look really hard at positives to bring to the table. We have to give notes. We have to have an opinion. John knows that. But what we can do, because we're not a PSB, because we're not subject to the same kind of scrutiny, we are looking for a very strong point of view political show. So anybody who has a very strong political point of view will come to us. They won't go to any other outlet. So that's an opportunity for us. The other layer of creative freedom that we can offer, for example, for someone like Russell Howard, who is one of John's clients who we work with, is he comes on, we put him in the Electric Theatre, invite 200 people. He gets to choose who's on the show, which up-and-coming comedians he likes, and he gets to make the filthiest jokes that he likes and make fun of whomever he wants. And he says right out on camera, I'm so happy I'm here because I can say whatever I want. However, we wouldn't have him if the BBC didn't develop him first. So I think this mixed economy is really fruitful for the talent if it's a little difficult for the rest of us.
Also, I think the BBC's not here, so we need to be careful we don't spend the entire time talking about them as if they're monsters. I mean, I think it's
They've
incredibly...
moved out of talent, that's why they're not here.
Well, it's incredibly difficult at BBC. I worked there for a long time to do what we're talking about, which is to find talent who are allowed to have an incredibly strong tone of voice, particularly in satire and politics, because, as we've talked about, the scrutiny on them is extraordinary. And I think satire and political programming or topical programming is an area where we all need to work out what our next big thing is and how we're going to do it, because for all the reasons you talk about, it's particularly difficult for us, but it's also probably never been more important. So finding that person or those people that can bring a kind of commentary, but do it in ways that adhere to all the various restrictions that we have on us is very important. And I have to say, I think apart from possibly Matt, there hasn't been a huge, to my mind, there hasn't been a huge pool of people out there on other platforms who've presented themselves as extraordinary satirical voices. Have there? Do you know any?
Well,
Because you've
my
got
view,
a commission here.
Yeah, quite.
Finger out.
my view is that Chris Addison, right,
Yeah.
who went on to be an executive producer of Veep on HBO, is exactly that. He won an Emmy for it, but it was done by HBO. Andy Zaltzman, who, with John Oliver, made a podcast called The Bugle and still does it and has done it since 2004, is exactly that. He does a show called
With all
Satirist.
due respect, I think the moment that we get it
think
right,
I think there are people.
the moment that we get it right and we create a head of steam around a political point of view on the major and smaller channels, and people see that they can grow into this kind of career, like the drama boom. I mean, we've seen it in the States with Trevor Noah and the 5 or 6 late night shows. Now everybody thinks they can be a late night host because so many people are. We just need to get 3 or 4 out the door, and then
But it's also partially, the thing about the satire shows in the States, that they're sort of alternative news shows, in that I think young people watch The Daily Show partly for news.
Yeah.
They don't watch news. But it comes back to the number of episodes you make. If you do 6 or 8 episodes of a satire show, you're never going to get head of steam. It's something. Satire is an organic thing that comes out of what goes on. That's like, I suppose, going back to years, Spitting Image, I don't think that ever would have stopped being commissioned in the US. I mean, Saturday Night Live started in the 80s. It went through bad periods. It's still there, developed some talent, and now it's a massive hit again because of Donald Trump. And so the truth is that I think we did have the vehicles, we got rid of them for whatever reason.
And just moving really back to the notion of the sort of entertainment presenters, is the art of the presenter dead now? Do you think now that we've got a show like Streetmate being presented by Scarlett Moffat or Rylan doing Big Brother, do you think there are the sort of platforms and
They're just different forms of entertainment. The original Streetmate was Davina. Davina's not a light entertainment, wasn't at that stage. And I think as I said, I come back to this slightly odd analogy I used, but we're thinking nostalgically about the past to look for the future stars. They'll come in different ways because entertainment is changing the whole time.
Also, I mean, Ant and Dec weren't. They were soap stars, and they became presenters. I mean, again, Wayne's right. We sort of need to acknowledge the fact that we just need to look at things in different ways, I think.
One thing that's come up a lot that we won't go into much detail on, but obviously the gender pay gap. The thing that we haven't talked about is whether the agent had a role to play in that, in creating that. And Wayne, do you have a view on that?
She's obviously setting me up for it. Well, I don't know. I thought it was very amusing, and one of the people whose name was mentioned, the actual agent complained about it. I thought, you should get a new agent. Really, I couldn't, but I don't know what else you want me to say about that.
John?
Well, I think it is true that the agent is there to be blamed, mainly. But I think in the end, if there is a gender pay gap, it's the employer's responsibility, full stop. It doesn't matter how bad or good the agents are. But in the end, I run quite a reasonable sized business. I know we don't have a gender pay gap, right? And if we did, I'd fix it.
But where do you
if I was running the BBC, I would fix it today. I wouldn't say I'll commission a report on it, they knew there was a gender pay gap before they had to publish the salaries. So
But
they
where
should
do you
just
think
fix it.
that gender pay gap came from?
I think
What's
it's
your-
I imagine it came from a historical view of women by people at the BBC in the same way that, but I think that it's not this management, it's probably not the last management, it's probably not the management before it, it's probably history, right? And it's been perpetuated by, say, from 2008, when austerity hit, and basically no one could give a pay rise, or there was an attempt not to pay pay rises. So who's going to fix the gender pay gap that when their priority is to not pay anybody? But the truth is, a gender pay gap is the responsibility of the employer. It's not the responsibility whether somebody has a good or bad agent. And to be honest, the middling people, where there are significant issues with salaries, I would say in the £100,000 to £200,000 level, you know, they're probably all paid a bit better than they are at other broadcasters. It's entirely down to the employer. Those people are not people who've got clout that can kind of go off somewhere else. They're just people who are paid differently.
Gender pay aside, what about the role of the agent in getting to a point where the government felt it was necessary to try and intervene on this?
So,
I mean, do you think agents were in some sense responsible for inflating salaries to a point where
no, I think the
there was
employer's responsible for inflating salaries because they decide what they pay, right? If you are an artist who gets hot, or if you're a television executive who works at the BBC, and then a big American studio comes to offer you a job where you get paid 5 times more than that, you're likely to take the job whether you've got an agent or not. So that's just, I don't think that's the agent's fault, right? I mean, it's just any more than if you go and work for a different broadcaster, you get paid more money.
Do you think the BBC salaries are inflated then?
inflated?
Yeah.
No. I was just interested to know whether you'd had any sort of moment of introspection about it.
Well, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of that. I think
Let's leave him to go and think
people.
about that.
I think
Because I've spoken to a number of
I
agents
personally
who
think
do-
that
a number
people
of
worry
agents who do
too
feel
much.
very worried about it.
I think people worry too much about talent pay, but I think you should worry about the cost of programming and the total cost of a package. Sometimes the talent is worth a lot of money, sometimes it's not. Right? And the fact is that people get incredibly exercised about it, particularly executives, right? And sometimes but the truth is, I've never known an executive that doesn't get a really heavy-handed agent or lawyer to negotiate their deal where they move jobs, right?
So just to finish up, one last question to each of you, the same question really. If there's one thing we need to do about the issues that we have in talent at the moment, what is that one important thing? Jill?
I think we need to build a stronger development system somewhere, as I said, between discovery and huge success.
Ed?
I think related to that, we need to stop making talent about transactions and making it about relationships with broadcasters or with platforms they want to stick with, and they feel that they have a kind of genuine long-term future with them, which is partly what John was talking about.
Wayne, anything to add?
Trust in the talent. That's always been my motto. Support, nurture, but trust in the talent and don't there's a whole issue and the two Andys were talking about on the first day, which is why some of these new platforms are interesting because they allow creative freedom, etc. And I think we're in danger. We need to rethink the role of the commissioner, I think, because we seem to have in Britain a tranche of, across everywhere, lots of people involved in the process. And our business is all about failure. Most of the shows we launch don't work. Having all these commissioners interfering in different ways, not interfering, you need commissioners, but there's a lot more levels you have to go through, and it hasn't changed the success-failure ratio in any way at all. So trust with the talent, because they might just get it right.
So the role of the commissioner sounds like that's a discussion we need to have at a future RTS.
I think so. I mean, you definitely need people who commission. That's a very important thing in the editorial and creative process. But I think we all know sometimes it's got overcomplicated.
John?
I think that the key thing is to remember that talent's a benefit, not a problem. If you can work with great talent, it makes things really easy, not hard. And I think that everyone realising that investing in the future of diverse talent, new talent, young talent is all about the future of the British industry and something that's made us great in the world. And if we pull back from that, I think things will be not rosy, that will go in the wrong direction. So I think we've got great talent, we should spend more money on it.
We are pretty much out of time. Does anyone have any burning questions they'd like to ask in relation to talent? So in the front row here, if microphone number 1, please. Sorry, just the gentleman there. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake Sperry, RaceBot TV, Global Sim Racing Channel, and also Southampton Solent University. Question to Ed. It sort of relates to the industry that I work in right now. I'm part of the esports culture in and around sim racing. It's just this weekend that I'm going to be part of the McLaren's World's Fastest Gamer iRacing qualifiers. So in terms of nurturing new talent and the way that in sports journalism you see there is a lot of stability with the likes of John Motson, you look at Blowers, you look at Murray Walker, who have all been in that same situation. Can you safely say that there is a lot of a platform with the way that esports is going right now, that you can nurture a new broadcasting initiative with broadcasters coming up like Will Vincent, myself, Connery Maddock, and all of the other broadcasters who are really putting in a lot of effort for not much at the moment?
I think sport is an interesting area. I mean, Murray Walker is, bless him, not doing a huge amount now, but I think the platforms there are for sport and for new talent around sport are different to some of the ones we're talking about at the moment. We do have a lot of space at Channel 4 for new and upcoming sport talent, and we're trying to find new ways of using them. We have a huge off-peak strategy around that, and as I said, we made a massive intervention around the Paralympics. I think the sports you're talking about are slightly more complicated, and I get that. But we can talk about it afterwards if you like. But I mean, I think it's something we're really keen to look at more.
Well, unfortunately, we have now run out of time, so it just leaves me to thank the wonderful panel. If you please join me in giving them a round of applause for talking all about talent.